think that someone can answer this reductively, that someone can say, well, look, it's all about your DNA, and it's all about the way in which the stardust eventually, by a long process that we call evolution, whether it's in physics as an evolution or in biology, resulted in you. If that's your explanation for what you are, then yeah, the universe did not certainly intend to create you. It didn't intend anything, and it has no purpose. But you might cling to the thought, not that human beings are the only special creation in the universe and there might not be a great proliferation of life elsewhere, but that there is something special about you. That when you look in the eyes of somebody you love, you see more than something that is just a collocation of atoms that is here for a brief crack of light between two darknesses. You might actually have a poetic and spiritual understanding of what it means to be a human being, and you might be unwilling to have that robbed by somebody who sees you in reductive and material terms. You might think that you have a relationship with God that you can't put on a blackboard, that you can't explain, that you can't account for, but that is real, just like the love that you feel for the people in your life who are dear to you. And what I guess I'm saying to you, and maybe what this divide is really about, is whether you think the universe is a mystery or a puzzle. If you think it's a puzzle, then you think it's susceptible to rational explanation, and one day we'll figure it out if we're only smart enough and we try hard enough and we're not pathetically lazy, as we religious people were called a moment ago. But let me tell you what we lazy people think. We think it's a mystery. We think we'll never figure it out. We think it's about God.
Michael Shermer.
Well, I think we need to clarify a couple of words here. When we talk about does the universe have a purpose, obviously not. The universe is mostly just stars and planets and comets and other stuff. But just take stars, for example. There's hundreds of billions of them in our galaxy. There's hundreds of billions of galaxies. Most of the universe is just stars. All they're doing is converting hydrogen into helium under great pressure and heat. That's it. They're not sitting there thinking, I got to give Michael Shermer some purpose here because, you know, if I don't, he's going to kill himself or something. No. They're just converting hydrogen into helium. Gentlemen, we're in agreement on this. You know this is true. What you're arguing is that because I can't think of any purpose outside of stars burning hydrogen into helium, therefore there has to be a God. We're not debating whether there's a God or not. Don't you think, even if there isn't a God, that you should find some purpose? This is in a way a kind of argument from ignorance. Because there is no answer, therefore there must be a God. Or the argument from personal incredulity. Because I can't think of an answer, therefore there has to be a God. So what they're arguing is that because I can't think of a purpose outside of God, therefore there must be a God. Gentlemen, maybe there's a God, maybe there's not. Either way, don't you think you ought to roll up your sleeves and see if you can figure out some useful things to do to give yourself purpose outside of God? Don't you think that's worthwhile? I used to be on this side. I went to Pepperdine University. It's a Church of Christ school. I was a born-again evangelical Christian for 7 years. I believed that argument until I gave it a little thought and thought, wait a minute. Shouldn't I be doing these nice things for other people? Shouldn't I be finding love and commitment to somebody, a meaningful career, helping my social community and being involved in politics, trying to transcend myself and do something outside of shouldn't I be doing those things anyway? So here's my challenge for you, gentlemen. Let's just do a thought experiment here for just a moment. Just pretend there is no God. Did you just lose your purpose in life? Don't you think you should be doing these good things anyway? If if there turns out there is no God, gentlemen, really, would you stop doing the things you're doing? Would you stop being loving to your spouses? Would you quit being nice to other people? Would you rape, pillage, and steal? No, I don't think so. I think you're doing this anyway, even if there is no God. So just try it on. Just try it on for just an hour here. Try on the atheist cap. Just see how it feels. Nothing will change. You'll still have meaning and purpose in life. Thank you.
Matt Ridley, who spoke earliest, spoke of pattern versus purpose and suggested that what we have demonstrated is pattern, but what we can't observe is purpose. There's function as a function of pattern, but still no purpose towards which these things are moving. And then he spoke of progress. We are experiencing progress. Progress in our scientific understanding of the world and in our use of this understanding in developing technology that helps us make our way in the world. But what is this idea of progress if it's not a concept of value? Something that is ultimately of some good value. What makes this a point of progress unless it's just simply change, movement from one state to another? It has to be progress only on the condition that the movement is towards something better. And the idea of better imports the notion of value. But it seems to me that his conception of pattern without purpose leaves no room for value. He says we do not agree that life has purpose if there is a God, but he didn't give us an argument that life does not have purpose even if God exists. So I'm not sure why he would assert that without any support if that's what he believes. He says that it's been amply demonstrated that it's possible for all of the patterns that we see in the world to be produced from the bottom up. Well, that's a lot different than saying that we know that it's true. I'm not sure we know that it's possible. He hasn't demonstrated that. He's just saying we do know that it's possible. And I'm saying we don't know that it's possible, but even if we did know it's possible, that wouldn't tell us that's what we should believe, because something else might also be possible, namely a top-down explanation, which is actually a better explanation, and that's what we've been arguing. So it's not good enough to say this is possible. Now, Michael Shermer has said that it's obvious that the universe has no purpose, that all that stars do is convert hydrogen, convert hydrogen into helium. But let's put it this way, if stars weren't doing that sort of thing, you and I wouldn't exist. And so it does matter whether these things do exist, these stars, and have the properties they do, and whether the laws of nature are as they are. Turning to Richard Dawkins, I was really surprised to hear him speak of the horseflies and the lobsters, picking the really easy, cherry-picking the really easy cases of medieval belief as to why these things exist. And, it's good for a laugh, but I think people who believe that the universe has a purpose are bound to have the last laugh when responding to any naturalist who says, everything is merely apparent design. We're not talking about horseflies and lobsters. We're talking about the whole kit and caboodle, and he wants to say none of it is purposeful. Thank you.
I think the whole case the other side is putting really comes down to an emotional case rather than a rational one. William Lane Craig seemed to think that it would be so intolerable, so disagreeable that we are doomed to death, that the universe is doomed to death, somehow playing on the heartstrings, playing on the emotions. It's not nice to think that we're all going to die. It's not nice to think that the universe is going to die a heat death and that everything is going to come to an end. It's not nice to think that everything is meaningless. And therefore, somehow that must prove that there is purpose in the universe, that there is some sort of top-down supervising God. David Wolpe seemed to, I thought rather disagreeably, claim for the theist side a monopoly on such things as love and the things that, again, touch the heartstrings. Do the people on that side really think that atheists don't love? Do they really think that we don't get a fantastic swelling of the breast when we look up at the Milky Way when we look down a microscope and see the amazing complexity of life? Do you think that we don't have emotions? Do you think we're somehow mechanical? The other side uses words like mere, accident, reductive, nothing but chemistry, nothing but blind forces. What our side is saying is that because of the amazing process of evolution by natural selection, we have brains that bring into the universe, maybe for the first time, that bring into the universe all these wonderful things like love and value and indeed purpose. We construct our own purposes. Do you seriously think that the people on our side don't have purposes? Do you think that we don't fall in love? Do you think that we don't, when we write our books, have a purpose in writing our books? Do you think that when we go through life, we lack all purpose simply because there is no top-down governor? We have purposes just the same as anybody else. But we have an explanation for why we have a brain that has a purpose. It's because of evolution by natural selection. Now, Mr. Craig was critical of me for refusing to answer the why question because I said it's a silly question. The mere fact that you can ask a question in the English language doesn't make it a question that deserves an answer. I could say, what is the color of jealousy? It's not a sensible question. It's a silly question. And the same goes for the question of why is the universe the way it is.
Well, after such a great introduction, I can't wait to hear the speaker myself. On one side, we have my esteemed colleagues who are 100% certain that the universe is pointless, meaningless, and there is no God. On the other side, we have another group that is 100% certain the universe has a point, has a meaning, and there is a God. One side's right, one side's wrong, right? My personal point of view is they're both wrong. What is science? Science is based on decidable statements. If I drop my cell phone, I know it's decidable that it will fall under gravity. Science is based on statements that you can test, reproducible, decidable, falsifiable. But the question of does God exist, does the universe have a point, is undecidable. It is not part of science. It's like trying to disprove a unicorn. Let's say you want to disprove the existence of unicorns. It's really hard to do because maybe some island, maybe in outer space, there are unicorns. How do you prove that unicorns do not exist? Very difficult. Now, I'm a physicist. My goal in life is to complete Einstein's dream of an equation, perhaps no more than 1 inch long, that will summarize all physical knowledge and allow us to, quote, read the mind of God. So what was his point of view toward God? Einstein said there really are 2 types of God, and that's the source of confusion. The first God is the personal God, the God of vengeance, the God that smites the Philistines, the God that answers your prayers, the God of Moses and Isaac and Jacob. Einstein said he couldn't believe in that God, but there's a second God, the God of Spinoza, Leibniz, the God of harmony, beauty, simplicity, elegance, that the universe could not have been an accident. So I see no evidence of God. However, that doesn't mean that there is no existence, there's no meaning. That doesn't mean there's not a purpose or a God out there. I just can't see it in the equations of physics. So in string theory, which is what I do for a living, we think we have a candidate for the theory of everything, the theory that eluded Einstein. And so we even now have a candidate for the mind of God. In string theory, because everything is based on vibrating strings,
Time out.
the candidate for the mind of God would be, oh, time's up.
Michio Kaku. Just
The
last word,
candidate for
please.
the mind of God would be cosmic music
Thank you.
resonating through 11-dimensional hyperspace. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Michio Kaku. I agree with David Wolpe on something. I agree that there is mystery out there, that there is some things we will never explain. I believe, actually, that we're going to create more mystery the more we discover. Science is in the business of generating mystery. That's what it does. I simply don't agree with the final step of the argument, because there's mystery, so there's God. Or because there's mystery, so there's purpose. I simply don't see the logical connection in that. I think mystery, and I think Michio Kaku's right, there's mystery, there's things we're not going to know the answer to. But the idea that you can somehow jump from that to saying everything we've learned about life, about planets, about things, that everything we've learned so far has shown them to be purposeless, that's all wrong, and that suddenly, round the next corner, we're suddenly going to find purpose. That's simply implausible. It's a bit like saying that suddenly, round the corner, on a mountain in Mexico, we're suddenly going to find a unicorn. I don't think that's very likely. I think it's extremely improbable that we'll find a unicorn. We've got a wonderful explanation for unicorns now. Unicorn tusks did turn up in medieval Europe. They were the tooths of narwhal whales. That's what they were. We know the answer. So, of course there are mysteries. There are going to be more mysteries. We're creating mysteries all the time. But that doesn't prove a purpose.
There has been a major shift in the last two speeches in this debate. Did you see what it was? We've argued tonight, first of all, that if God does not exist, then the universe has no purpose. Our atheist colleagues admit that. But now what they've been claiming is, but look, we can construct a purpose for our lives, in Richard Dawkins' words, or in Michael Shermer's words, we can develop ways to make us feel better, feeling like we have a purpose. Now, you see, this just is to say that we can pretend that the universe exists for some purpose. And this is just make-believe. This is the subjective illusion of purpose. But there is, on this view, no objective purpose for the universe. And we, of course, would never deny that you can't develop subjective purposes for your life. The point is, on atheism, they're all illusory. And that's why I agree with Richard Dawkins when he said, at bottom, this is an emotional question rather than a rational one. I wish I had had the courage to say that. I'm convinced that people adopt atheism, at least tonight, primarily for emotional rather than rational purposes. The rational arguments tonight all have supported theism. But you cannot live as though your life were purposeless and meaningless. And therefore you adopt subjective illusions of purpose to make your life livable. And that's why I think atheism is not only irrational, it is profoundly unlivable. You cannot live consistently and purposefully within the context of an atheistic worldview.
Thank you.
I have to correct my own colleague, Richard Dawkins. Richard, jealousy does have a color. It's green. Shakespeare figured that out. And there's a reason for that, a good evolutionary reason. Okay, gentlemen, and Michio, and technically you're right, we can't prove or disprove that there's a God, but please understand, Michio, these guys argue that you can prove it through science and empirical tests and reason and so on. We're arguing that they haven't done so from a scientific perspective. That's the only reason we deal with it on that level. Professor Craig, we don't pretend to have purpose when we love our spouses and have meaningful work and career and do things for other people. If we were pretending, they would know. Your spouse would know if you're faking it. You actually have to believe it. It's real purpose. The real purpose we have, to finish where I began, is that this long lineal chain, 3.5 billion years of life on Earth without a single missed generation, and here we are. We have inherited the mantle of life's caretaker on Earth. the only home we've ever known. The realization that we exist together for a narrow slice of time in a limited little parsec of space elevates us all to a higher plane of humanity
Time out.
and humility.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
4 things I did not say. 1, I never said scientists don't have poetry and love and so on. I said they're not susceptible to the scientific method. That's very different. 2nd, I did not say that my opponents were pathetically lazy. 3rd, I did not say they were childish. And that's why 4th, I did not say that good manners in argument are only on our side and not on their side. But here's one thing that I did say. I've sat at the bedside of scores of people who are dying. I've held their hands. I have faced death several times myself through illness. I know what it is to understand that you are ending your life in this world. And I know what it is to ask yourself the question, is this the only world, or is the universe something greater and something deeper? We don't claim we can prove God. We don't claim we can prove purpose. We do claim that our intuition of purpose is not empty, it's not foolish, it's not childish, and it's not stupid. That when I hold the hand of someone who's dying, that I really do believe that I usher them into another mode of being. People have believed that since the beginning of time, and the fact that not everyone believes it today doesn't mean it is not true. After all, though he slay me, still will I believe in him. Thank you.
When you hold the hand of somebody who's dying, it's nice for them to think that they're going to a better place. Of course it's comforting. That doesn't make it true. You cannot argue for some truth about the universe by saying that it would be nice if it were true. Of course, there is mystery. There is enormous mystery in the universe, and that's what science is working on. To respond to that mystery by saying God did it, to respond to that mystery by saying, oh, there's just some divine designer who figured it all out, that is lazy. It doesn't answer the question. Darwin provided us with the role model for how you approach that kind of thing. He took the really hard case, which is life. He took the case where it seemed obvious to everybody that it had to have a purpose, that it had to be designed. He showed for the hard case that it could be done. That's what science is working on. The mystery, when it is solved, will be solved by scientists who will use the Darwinian method. That's to say, they will explain in a bottom-up way how it is not just that life came about, and we know that, we understand that now, but also how it is that the universe came about. That is the challenge of science. That is what science is going to rise to. We shall not resort to lazy, second-rate explanations that just lie down under the problem and say, God did it.
Time out.
Well, I have to say that I'm surprised by what Michio Kaku said at the very beginning in ascribing to our team 100% certainty in what we have argued. I don't think any of us claimed to have 100% certainty, and in fact, I would say that all of the arguments we presented for the existence of God were probability arguments. And they are arguments to the effect that the existence of God is so likely that it is the way we ought to bet with our lives if we should have purpose. That is not 100% certainty. But I did get the sense of 100% certainty that science is the only source of knowledge, according to this side over here. And Michio Kaku, maybe that's your view too, I don't know, because you did say that the God question is undecidable. How undecidable? Well, presumably because you can't prove that God exists or even show his probability if you have science only to go with. But of course, there are many things we know, including that God may well exist because of other evidence without depending exclusively on science. Richard Dawkins has accused us of making an emotional argument. But I believe that his presentation is especially emotional. He has not argued that God does not exist. Thank you. He has not shown that any of the arguments we presented here today are fallacious. Rather, he has simply dismissed the idea of God as pathetic.
Time out, I'm sorry.
That's emotional. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This has been a fascinating debate, and what it really is the contrast between knowledge attained by observation and knowledge obtained by revelation. And they're quite different. Knowledge obtained by observation is testable, and it's always being tested, and you can actually put numerical probabilities on it. Knowledge obtained by revelation is not testable, and you cannot really assign a sensible probability to it. And that is really the source of the great controversy. Now, the question of the purpose of the universe is the following. You know, if you say, what is purpose? Purpose is the reason for doing something, or the reason for existing. Now, this implies that the universe has to have a reasoning creator. Personally, I do not feel that I see enough evidence to support that point of view. That's my own personal feeling from listening to all the arguments and observing what's around me. Now, it's true that we do not understand things completely in science. We probably never will. There are mysteries that will always elude us because there are things we cannot measure. We can't go outside the observable universe. We can't go before the Big Bang. We cannot approach those regions. So we have to assume that we will be ignorant about certain things. Now, the question is whether you have to have a narrative to fill in that mystery.
Time out, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Andres. I'm very delighted to see that both sides here embrace physics as the answer for everything, and the two physicists here had little to speak. They had spoke the least. But I would like to say one thing. The way to approach the argument is we're a little bit premature because, as Professor Kaku said, we're not yet at the final theory. We don't know everything yet. And what I want to do here is to give you an idea of where the final theory is going. Professor Kaku's approach of string theory is one direction. There are other directions called supersymmetry, and we have something called the standard model, which is 3 formulas in his book, actually. They all have to do in one principle, and that's symmetry. We don't understand symmetry, and we don't know why it's there. But we're getting close to understanding symmetry. Now, in the last 43 seconds I want to give you one example of symmetry. The electron is a very interesting thing. It goes around once, and it reverses itself. So it has to go around twice in order to start where it began, to get back to where it began. You can try it at home. You think there's nothing in the world that does that. I go around a circle, I come back where I started, but I can't do it. There, try it at home. One last thing. There is a symmetry called SU5, which I can't explain to you, but it was invented by Sheldon Glashow at Boston University and another physicist. And if it's true, the universe will go away regardless of whether it's expanding and whether the stars are dying. Thank you very much.
Bravo.
So without the brain, there is no color, there is no sound, there is no pain, there is no good, there is no evil, there is no idea of God. As the brain evolves over the next millions or billions of years, we will embody more and more of the universe. The human embodies or sees and thinks and feels more about the universe than an ant, than a cat, than a monkey, than a dolphin. The brain is part of the universe. So the universe itself has a direction. But whether there is a purpose giver from the outside is, I think, something that neither religion nor science is ever going to prove. However, I think what is absolutely clear is that the universe can give birth to a purpose, regardless of how pointless. Thank you.
I'm Dan Schachter. I'm a humble experimental cognitive psychologist who studies memory in the brain. I'll tell you a little bit about that later this afternoon. I don't know whether the universe has a purpose or not. I don't know whether we're going to be able to find out. I did find this debate very interesting, the opinions expressed on both sides. And I'm going to step back from the debate and look at it from the perspective of a cognitive psychologist. What interested me mostly was what's going on in the heads of the people on the two sides. We heard a mixture of some very sharp reasoning. We heard a lot of emotion. We heard people bringing lots of background baggage and belief to the table. And that gave me a great idea. I want to go back to my lab and start studying how people reason about God and the purpose of the universe. I think there's a lot of interesting material here. Interestingly, last week I heard a talk at Harvard, where I'm based, by a social psychologist by the name of Nick Epley, formerly of our department, now at the University of Chicago. He put people in a brain scanner and asked them to think about God. And these are all people who believed in the existence of God. And what he found was very interesting, that a part of the frontal lobe, it's a part of the frontal lobe, I'm going to show you in my talk later today, the inner frontal lobe, that becomes very active when we think about ourselves, becomes similarly active when we think about God. I don't know exactly what to make of that finding, but I'll ask the two sides to think about it.
Thank you.
Hi, you'll be hearing me speak today as well. One of the things was the question, does the universe have a purpose? I think it's difficult to say as far as the universe goes. I mean, it's kind of like asking, does this stage have a purpose? Well, I mean, we're on it, but is it going to go further? Is it going to do something great? I'm not sure. I mean, it's a stage. It's the universe. It's galaxies. It's stars. It's not just people. But I think a more important question to ask is, does whether the universe have a purpose or not, does that affect our purpose? My impression from listening to William Lane Craig and the rabbi to the side over here was that the universe not having a purpose took away from our purpose. But I believe that, I heard the rabbi say that, a purpose needs a purposer. Why can't we be the purposer? We heard about the collective brain. Why can't we have a collective purpose? Ultimately, I don't think that the question of whether the universe has a purpose will affect our purpose. And I hope that each and every one of you will think about what purpose you want to have in life outside of a religion, to do it for the sake of having a purpose, not because of the universe. That was just my thinking you're listening to.
Bueno, Michu Kaku, 1 second, please, Michu. Stop. First, here I am, in the middle. Well, wait a second. Sean will take the word, please.
You can start the clock. So, I'm a clinical therapist, and you'll be hearing from me today. And I've heard both sides, and I'm still in question myself, raised as a Catholic who still wonders about all of this universe. But what I do know is that when my patients come to see me, if they do not have a purpose, they unravel. If they do not have a purpose, they perish. What I hear is arrogance on the side of the atheists, that they believe that they are purposeful. But something as grand as the universe cannot be purposeful because, it's just space and empty. So that is arrogance to believe that an individual can have purpose, but something as grand and as vast as this entire space that we do not know all the answers, well, that cannot have a purpose. My friends, that is complete arrogance, and you must question it with your heart, your mind, and your soul.
Thank you. In my next book, Physics of the Future, I try to predict the next 100 years based on interviews with 300 scientists. Very difficult question, but I predict that 100 years from now, on the 103rd anniversary of this conference, we will have another debate arguing the same thing over again. Because, for two reasons. First, it is undecidable. You cannot decide this question using any known rational means. It is undecidable. Second, there's probably also a God gene. Some people believe that perhaps we are genetically predisposed to believing in higher beings, in which case we'll be talking about this debate forever, as long as we have our genes. Now, my colleague Stephen Hawking recently wrote a very controversial statement, was in all the headlines. He said, first, we have a theory of everything. It's string theory, the theory that I work on, and it takes you before the Big Bang. Therefore, God is not necessary, because we now have a theory of the pre-Big Bang universe. My attitude is, well, where did string theory come from? It goes on forever. Even if you could go before the Big Bang, then the question is, where did that theory come from? Undecidable.
Thank you. No. Each of you, but if you don't want to, you don't have to.
Okay. Just to make what, a 1 minute?
30 seconds. There's the close remark.
Okay. I'd like to say one thing, and then you. And
okay.
Then
all three. Up there?
Right here?
Or here?
Okay. Or here? Okay.
I'll go first.
Go ahead. Go.
If you want to, it's your space.
I've never been to a conference like this before. Most of the professional conferences at which I speak are philosophy conferences. So this is my initiation to this sort of IT subculture, information technology. And I would just urge you folks not to allow the IT community to become infected with the sort of self-defeating scientism and anti-religious bigotry that has characterized, for example, Richard Dawkins' talk yesterday. You need to realize that outside of this sphere, the most brilliant philosophers and many scientists in the world today are outspoken theists, and that this is a rational and defensible point of view.
Thank you very much. 30 seconds, please. Last remark. Mark.
I don't like hearing the word bigotry of our position. We've searched for purpose in the large structures of space. We've searched for it in the subatomic particles. We've searched for it in natural history. We've searched for it in bodies. We've searched for it in genes. We haven't found it. Yes, it might be round the corner, but it doesn't seem very likely now. We found pattern. We haven't found purpose. That's telling us something. It's a unicorn.
Thank you. David.
I'm not so certain. I want you to know I have tremendous respect for the three adversaries here. I've read many of their books, of all three of them, and I think they have a great deal to say that's very important. It's not as though I come here assuming I have all the answers. I doubt all the time. Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, a great rabbi, said he was a moon man. His faith waxed and waned. And I feel sometimes the same way. But with all your doubts, at a certain point, you have to make a commitment with your life. And so I follow the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said, I fail every day, but to victory I am born.
Time. Thank you very much. Matt, Michael, or Richard, whoever you want.
All right. Okay, so first of all, we're not saying that the universe has, that we have no purpose. We are the purpose givers. We are the humble ones in that sense. So, and it comes from the fact that this is what we do. We look for love, career, work, meaningful work, helping other people, and transcendence. That's where it comes from. We are the purpose makers. And I'll leave you with a purpose you can have. Always seek purpose with somebody else's purpose in mind, and never seek purpose in trying to take somebody else's purpose away. It's a very simple principle.
Okay. Please, Douglas.
Well, first of all, I simply want to thank our moderator and the entire conference organizers team for including a handful of theists in the program for this conference. I'm serious about that, and I hope that will continue. I think it's a very worthwhile discussion we've had. Let me finish, thank you, with a quote by C.S. Lewis, a great Christian thinker, who said, "If I find in myself a desire which nothing in this world can satisfy, then probably I was made for another world." Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Dawkins, the last remark.
Simplicity is that which is easy to understand,